Welcome to these gentle, soothing stories for sleep. I'm so glad you are here. Whether you are preparing to drift off to sleep, relaxing after a long day, or simply seeking a quiet companion, you've come to the right place. Tonight, we will begin a journey into a world almost identical to our own, but with one profound and perhaps unsettling difference. We are going to explore what would happen if humans didn't need sleep. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight, or how your day was. Please leave a comment below. Wherever you are, I hope you are feeling comfortable, relaxed, and ready to explore something gentle yet extraordinary. And if you find these soothing scientific journeys interesting, pleasant, or even just wonderfully weird, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps more souls who are searching for peace find their way here. Imagine for a moment the deep and profound quiet of 3 in the morning. Perhaps you have found yourself awake at this hour, feeling as though you are the only soul conscious in a sleeping world. The silence outside your window, a thick and heavy blanket. But in the world we are visiting tonight, this silence is different. You look out your window, not from a restless waking, but from a state of calm, continuous awareness, and you see a single, bright square of light in the house across the street. And then you notice another, and another. Your gaze drifts down the street, and you realize with a slow, creeping sense of wonder that every window is lit, each one a small beacon in the velvet darkness, because no one is asleep. The unbroken dawn of human consciousness has arrived. There is a new texture to the air at this hour, a constant, low thrum of activity that has replaced the hush of slumber. The gentle sigh of the wind is now layered with the distant hum of traffic that never ceases, the soft murmur of conversations from a park that is never empty, the rhythmic pulse of a factory that never closes. The scent of night-blooming jasmine now mingles with the faint, ever-present aroma of food being cooked, of projects being worked on, of life being lived in every single moment. The world has been gifted a third of its lifetime back, an extra 8 hours stitched seamlessly into the fabric of every day. And at first, this gift feels like a liberation. It is a sudden, vast expanse of new time, a quiet ocean of possibility. But to understand what we have gained, we must first understand what we have chosen to abandon. Deep within you, and within every living thing that has ever called this spinning planet home, there is an ancient, internal clock. It isn't made of gears and springs, but of genes and proteins, a masterpiece of biological engineering tucked away in a tiny part of your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the SCN. Think of it as a magnificent, invisible conductor, standing on a podium in the center of your mind, tirelessly directing an orchestra of trillions of cells. With elegant, silent gestures, this conductor tells your body when to raise its temperature, when to release hormones that make you feel alert or calm, when to slow your heart rate, and when to prepare your digestive system for a meal. This inner conductor has, for millions of years, taken its primary cue from the grandest clock of all, the rising and setting of the sun. Light pours into your eyes, traveling along the optic nerve, and gives the conductor its starting note for the day. This is the essence of our circadian rhythm, a beautiful, self-sustaining cycle that ties our innermost biology to the cosmic dance of the earth and sun. This master clock in the brain ensures that all the smaller clocks, the ones ticking away in your liver, your lungs, your muscles, are all playing in harmony. It is a symphony of perfect timing. In a world without sleep, this conductor has not been fired, but its most important piece of music, the nocturnal symphony of rest and repair, has been erased from the score. The SCN still tracks the light of day, but its command to prepare for slumber goes unheeded. We have overridden the most fundamental rhythm of our own nature, choosing instead a continuous, unceasing crescendo of wakefulness. The initial feeling is one of profound power, of having transcended a primitive biological limitation. The night is no longer a time for surrender, but a new frontier for productivity, for creativity, for connection. We have, in essence, conquered the night. We have silenced the gentle, insistent biological lullaby that has rocked our species to sleep since its very beginning. The hours that were once lost to the void of unconsciousness are now ours to fill. But this feeling of limitless energy, this vibrant, unending day, is only possible because we have learned to ignore a quiet, molecular whisper that rises from the very core of our being, a gentle, insistent chemical message that begs us to rest. And we must now ask ourselves, what is that whisper truly made of? Imagine a tiny, invisible dust, a kind of mental sand that begins to accumulate in your brain from the very moment you become conscious. With every thought that you have, every image that you see, every sound that you hear, with every beat of your heart and every watt of energy your brain burns, another grain of this fine, ethereal dust is released, settling gently into the intricate machinery of your mind. This is not just a poetic fancy, it is a remarkably close analogy for a chemical that is, right now, building up in your own brain as you listen to my voice. It is a simple, elegant molecule called adenosine. For our entire evolutionary history, adenosine has been the voice of that whisper, the tangible, physical substance of our need for rest. It is a byproduct, a kind of chemical exhaust, created when our brain cells consume energy. The molecule that powers our thoughts is called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. When your brain uses it, one of the things left behind is adenosine. Throughout the day, as you live and think and feel, the levels of this chemical messenger steadily rise, like water slowly filling a basin. This gradual accumulation is what we experience as sleep pressure. It is not a harsh demand, but a gentle, ever-increasing persuasion. It is the soft fog that begins to cloud the edges of your thoughts late in the evening, the pleasant heaviness that settles behind your eyes, the growing desire to simply let go and drift away. The longer you remain awake, the more adenosine accumulates, and the more insistent its call for rest becomes. Then, as you sleep, your brain slowly clears this adenosine away, resetting the system, so that when you awaken, the basin is empty once more, and you can begin the cycle anew, feeling fresh, clear, and alert. Now, many of us are familiar with a way to artificially fight this process. When you drink a cup of coffee or tea, the caffeine that enters your bloodstream makes its way to your brain. It does not stop the production of adenosine, but it performs a clever trick. It fits perfectly into the adenosine receptors on your brain cells, blocking them. It's like putting a small piece of tape over a keyhole. The adenosine key is still there, floating around, but it simply cannot get in to deliver its message of tiredness. This is why coffee doesn't truly give you energy. It just temporarily masks your fatigue. In the sleepless world we are imagining, our biology has been altered in one of two ways. Either our brains no longer produce adenosine as a byproduct of thought, or our receptors have become permanently immune to its effects. The result is the same. The pressure to sleep never builds. The basin never fills. We are left in a state of perpetual alertness, a sharp, unyielding clarity that feels immensely powerful at first. The day no longer has soft edges. There is no gentle, hazy descent into evening. There is only the crisp, unchanging state of being awake. But adenosine is more than just a sleepiness signal. It is a profound and ancient messenger that communicates a vital truth to our bodies. A period of intense activity must be followed by a period of recovery. It is the signal that tells the vast and complex systems of our body to switch from a mode of performance and interaction with the outer world to a mode of deep, internal maintenance and repair. Without it, we lose the primary biological trigger that initiates this crucial nightly restoration. It is like owning a magnificent, intricate machine that is designed to run for 16 hours and then cool down for 8 to allow its components to be cleaned and repaired. By removing adenosine, we have found a way to keep the machine running for all 24 hours. We marvel at its newfound productivity, its constant hum of operation. But we have also thrown away the instruction manual, ignoring the deep, evolved wisdom that tells us that relentless operation without rest always, eventually, comes at a cost. What happens to a machine that never gets the signal that it's time to cool down and mend itself? The machine of the body is one thing, a marvel of flesh and bone, but the far more delicate, far more mysterious landscape of the mind is another. Without the gentle reset of sleep, what becomes of our memories? Those precious, intangible threads that weave together the tapestry of who we are? Do they simply pile up endlessly in the quiet corridors of the brain? Picture your mind as a vast, magnificent library, its shelves stretching up into a misty, unseen ceiling, its corridors holding more volumes than you could ever hope to read. Every day of your life, thousands of new books are delivered to this library. Each book is a unique experience, a conversation you had, a fact you learned, the feeling of sunlight on your skin, the taste of a fresh strawberry, a melody you heard in passing. During your waking hours, these new acquisitions are simply left in great, untidy piles on the library floor. The librarians are too busy dealing with the constant influx of new information to do any sorting. This is the natural state of the waking mind, a place of vibrant, chaotic, and continuous collection. But in our world, every night, a special team of librarians arrives as we fall asleep. In the deep, quiet hours, they get to work. They pick up each book, examine it, and decide where it belongs. Some books, the trivial details of the day, are deemed unimportant and sent for recycling. Others, the crucial lessons, the beautiful moments, the important facts, are carefully catalogued and placed on the right shelf in the long-term archive, cross-referenced and linked to other books to build a rich tapestry of understanding. This nightly, diligent work is what we call memory consolidation. In a world without sleep, these night librarians have been laid off. The deliveries never stop, the books keep arriving every moment of the endless day, and the piles on the floor grow higher and higher. The library of the mind becomes an impassable maze of unsorted information. The initial feeling might be one of incredible mental capacity. Every detail of every moment seems to be retained. But soon, a different sensation begins to emerge. It is the feeling of a video that is constantly buffering, of a computer with 1,000 tabs open, its processor whirring with the strain of it all. Thoughts begin to trip over one another. Recalling a simple fact, someone's name, a word on the tip of your tongue becomes a monumental task. It feels like trying to find a single, specific book in a library that has just been struck by an earthquake. There is a persistent, low-grade mental static, a hum of cognitive overload that never fades. The scientific reality behind this analogy is one of the most elegant processes in our brains. The initial collection of the day's books happens in a part of the brain called the hippocampus, which acts like a temporary high-capacity notepad. It records experiences as they happen. But this notepad has limited space and is not meant for permanent storage. During the deep, slow-wave stages of sleep, a remarkable dialogue occurs. The hippocampus replays the important events of the day, communicating them to the vast, wrinkled outer layer of the brain, the neocortex. This is the library's permanent archive. The information is transferred, integrated with existing knowledge, and stored in a stable, long-lasting form. Without sleep, this transfer never happens. The hippocampus becomes overwhelmed, its notepad full, and our ability to learn new things grinds to a halt. We become trapped in a sea of our own recent experiences, unable to file them away to make room for more. But the librarians do more than just file books. They also tidy the shelves. During the day, as we learn and experience, our brain forms countless new connections between its neurons, called synapses. Many of these connections are temporary and weak, representing trivial or redundant information. During sleep, the brain actively goes through a process of synaptic pruning. It's like a master gardener tending to a rose bush, snipping away the smaller, weaker branches so that the main stems can grow stronger and produce more beautiful flowers. The brain weakens and removes the unimportant synaptic connections, which allows the more important, meaningful signals to stand out. It reduces the noise in the system, enhancing the signal. In a sleepless mind, this pruning never occurs. The neural circuits become impossibly cluttered, a dense, tangled thicket of connections where every thought creates an echo. Every signal gets lost in a storm of static. In this world, would we become masters of information, or would we simply be its prisoners? Our minds, once orderly libraries of wisdom, would transform into chaotic, impenetrable archives. We might hold the memory of every single second of our lives, but we would lose the ability to make sense of any of it. Wisdom, after all, is not about how much you know, but about how well you have organized what you know. And this magnificent librarian of the night doesn't just sort the dry, factual books of our lives. It also works with the vibrant, chaotic, and powerful illustrations of our emotions. What happens to the landscape of our hearts when this gentle, knightly artist is also dismissed from their duties? Think of the last time you felt a truly powerful emotion. Perhaps it was a wave of pure, unbridled joy, a sudden, sharp pang of grief, or a flash of hot, righteous anger. These emotions feel all-consuming in the moment, as though they are the only reality. But, with time, they recede. The wave crests, and then it gently washes back into the ocean of your being, leaving you changed, perhaps, but whole. The intensity fades, and you are left with the lesson, the memory, the gentle echo of the feeling. Now, imagine a world where that wave never fully recedes. Imagine it cresting, and then just staying there, a constant, agitated, high-frequency vibration at the very center of your soul. This is the world that awaits a humanity that has forgotten how to sleep, a world where our hearts have lost their calibration. The immediate experience would be one of stark, raw, and unfiltered emotional intensity. Minor frustrations would feel like world-ending catastrophes. A disagreement with a loved one would feel like a profound betrayal. A fleeting moment of pleasure would feel hollow, unable to anchor itself in a mind that is already saturated with emotional noise. There would be a pervasive loss of perspective, as if we were all forced to live our lives with our faces pressed up against the canvas of our own feelings, unable to step back and see the larger picture. Social interactions would become perilous, minefields of overreaction and misunderstanding. Empathy, the ability to feel with another, would become incredibly difficult, as we would each be trapped within the deafening echo chamber of our own untempered emotions. The world would not necessarily be more passionate. It would simply be more brutal, more chaotic, and far, far less compassionate. This descent into emotional volatility is not speculation. It is rooted in the beautiful and delicate partnership between two key regions of your brain. Deep within the temporal lobes lies a small, almond-shaped cluster of neurons called the amygdala. You can think of this as the emotional gas pedal of your brain. It is an ancient and powerful structure, responsible for generating quick, instinctive emotional responses, especially to potential threats. It is the source of the fight or flight response. Further up, in the front of your brain, lies the prefrontal cortex. This is the most recently evolved part of our brain, the seat of logic, reason, and executive function. It is our emotional brake. The prefrontal cortex is the calm, rational voice that can look at the amygdala's panicked alarm and say, "Wait, let's assess this situation. Is this really a threat? Or are we overreacting?" The constant, graceful communication between this gas pedal and this brake is what allows for nuanced, mature, and balanced emotional regulation. And the time when this crucial connection is fine-tuned, recalibrated, and strengthened is during sleep, specifically during the stage known as rapid eye movement, or REM sleep. During REM sleep, your brain is wildly active, almost as if you were awake, and it is in this unique state that the brain processes the emotional events of the day. It replays them, but in a neurochemical environment that is low in stress-inducing hormones. This allows the brain to strip away the visceral, painful charge from difficult memories while retaining the important lessons they contain. It is, in essence, a form of overnight therapy. It is the process that allows the emotional wave to finally recede. In a brain that never sleeps, this nightly therapy session never happens. The connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala becomes weak and frayed. The amygdala, the gas pedal, becomes hyperactive, reacting wildly to even the slightest provocation, while the prefrontal cortex, the brake, struggles to make its calming voice heard over the noise. It is like trying to drive a powerful car with a hypersensitive accelerator and brakes that are slowly failing. A sleepless humanity might gain endless time for action and thought, but it would lose the very emotional wisdom that makes that time meaningful. We would be brilliant, logical creatures perhaps, but we would be governed by the untamed, primitive terror of a hyperactive amygdala. Our emotional wounds, without the healing balm of REM sleep, would remain perpetually open and raw, accumulating over a lifetime until the weight of our own unprocessed pain becomes unbearable. But this nightly therapy, this retuning of our emotional instruments, doesn't just happen in an abstract, psychological space. It occurs within a quiet, hidden river that flows through the brain, a literal, physical process of cleansing that can only happen in the profound stillness of slumber. It is a river designed to wash the mind clean, not just of its emotional burdens, but of its physical ones as well. Imagine your brain, that incredible 3-pound universe you carry within your skull, as a dense and bustling metropolis. Its 100 billion inhabitants, the neurons, are constantly working, communicating, and consuming energy. Like any great city, this neural metropolis produces a tremendous amount of waste as a byproduct of its tireless activity. Day in and day out, metabolic toxins and discarded proteins are generated and cast aside, like garbage left on the curb after a busy day of commerce and life. In every other part of your body, a dedicated network of vessels called the lymphatic system acts as a sophisticated waste management service, collecting this cellular garbage and carrying it away to be processed and disposed of. But the brain, encased in the protective fortress of the skull, is sealed off from this system. For a long time, it was a profound mystery how the brain took out its own trash. The answer, we have discovered, is a process as beautiful as it is ingenious, and it happens almost exclusively while you sleep. In this world, without rest, a new and subtle affliction begins to settle over humanity. It is not a sharp pain or a clear illness, but a creeping cognitive fog, a feeling of mental viscosity, as if one's very thoughts have become thick and slow-moving, like a river silting up with mud. Creative leaps of insight become impossible, replaced by a plodding, linear form of logic. There is a dull, persistent pressure that feels like a headache, but is really the weight of a mind that is slowly suffocating in its own refuse. This is the consequence of a silent river that has ceased to flow. We call this remarkable cleaning process the glymphatic system. It is the brain's own private sanitation department, a plumbing network that uses the clear, watery cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF, that bathes the brain and spinal cord. During the day, while the city of the brain is bustling with the traffic of consciousness, this system is reduced to a mere trickle. But when we fall into the deep, restorative delta waves of sleep, a truly magical transformation occurs. The brain cells themselves, the glial cells that support the neurons, actually shrink, some by up to 60%. This dramatic shrinking widens the channels and canals between the cells, opening up the floodgates. The cerebrospinal fluid can now surge through the brain tissue in powerful, rhythmic waves, flushing through the city's streets and alleyways, collecting the accumulated metabolic waste, including toxic proteins like beta-amyloid, which is famously associated with Alzheimer's disease. The analogy of a city is remarkably apt. Imagine trying to send an army of street sweepers and fire hoses to clean a major city's downtown core in the middle of rush hour. It would be impossible. The cleaning crews would be stuck in traffic, their work impeded at every turn. The only logical way to do it is to wait until night, when the cars are off the roads and the streets are empty. Sleep is the brain's version of this. It is the period when the traffic of conscious thought subsides, allowing the glymphatic system's cleaning crew to do its vital, nightly work. In a world that never sleeps, the traffic never stops. The streets of the mind are never empty. The glymphatic river, which should be a cleansing flood, remains a sluggish, ineffective trickle, unable to wash away the toxic sludge that accumulates with every passing moment of relentless awareness. The price of our constant, unbroken consciousness is the slow, inexorable poisoning of the very organ that produces it. We would remain awake, alert, and aware, all while the intricate architecture of our minds slowly corrodes from within. We would be the lucid, conscious witnesses to our own cognitive decline, watching as the lights of our own intelligence and creativity slowly dimmed, unable to do the one simple thing that could wash it all clean. But the quiet work of the night is not only about cleaning away the physical debris of the day's thoughts, or recalibrating the heart's delicate emotional machinery. In the deepest, most mysterious phase of our nightly journey, something else is lost. Something stranger, more magical, and more profoundly human. In our sleepless world, we would also lose the world behind our eyes. Where do the stories go when there is no one left to dream them? Where do the impossible landscapes, the surreal juxtapositions, and the bizarre, nonsensical narratives find a home when the mind that invents them never closes its eyes to the literal world? In a world without sleep, we would also inherit a world without dreams, and the loss would be more profound than we could ever imagine. The landscape of this new humanity would feel flatter, its colours subtly muted, its edges harder and more defined. It would be a world of stark, relentless, and unforgiving logic. Art would become iterative, a skillful recombination of what is already known, but lacking the spark of true, unbidden novelty. Science would advance, but only in careful, predictable steps, missing the wild, intuitive leaps that so often spring from a mind at rest. Problem-solving, in business and in life, would become rigid and formulaic. That strange and wonderful human capacity for out-of-the-box thinking would slowly atrophy, because we would have paved over the very place where the box does not exist. The magic, the surrealism, the productive madness that dreams inject into our conscious lives would simply vanish, leaving behind a world that is more predictable, more orderly, and infinitely less interesting. This is not just a lament for the loss of nocturnal poetry, it is the loss of a powerful cognitive tool. That strange state of consciousness we call rapid eye movement, or REM sleep, is a neurochemical wonderland. Your brain is buzzing with high-frequency activity, almost as if you were awake, yet your body is immobilized, and the rational, censoring part of your mind, the prefrontal cortex, is largely offline. In this state of controlled chaos, the brain begins to weave together memories, ideas, and emotions in ways that would be impossible in waking life. It is a form of mental alchemy, connecting disparate concepts to form new, previously unimagined compounds of thought. The brain becomes a grand pattern matcher, finding loose threads of association between things that logic would tell us are entirely unrelated. It is in this creative sandbox that so many of humanity's greatest breakthroughs have been quietly born. The German chemist August Kekulé famously struggled for years to understand the structure of the benzene molecule, until he dreamed of a snake seizing its own tail, revealing the solution of a closed ring. The melody for the song Yesterday, one of the most famous in history, came to Paul McCartney in a dream, so fully formed that he initially believed he must have plagiarized it from somewhere. Dreams are the mind's private laboratory, a place where it can run endless simulations and experiments without the constraints of physics or the fear of failure. But dreams do more than just solve our scientific and artistic problems. They are also a vital rehearsal space for our lives. They are a kind of biological virtual reality simulator, allowing us to practice our responses to threatening scenarios. When you dream of being chased or of falling, your brain is running a drill, strengthening the neural pathways you would need to use in a real emergency, all from the safety of your bed. This threat simulation theory suggests that dreams are an evolutionary adaptation that helps us prepare for the dangers of the waking world. They also help us navigate the complexities of our social lives, allowing us to replay and re-examine interactions, helping us to better understand others and ourselves. In erasing the supposedly unproductive hours of sleep, we might inadvertently erase the very wellspring of human ingenuity, creativity, and resilience. We would become a species of tireless workers, but we would have forgotten how to play in the deepest sense. What is progress in a world that can no longer dream of the impossible? What is the value of an extra 8 hours of conscious thought, if that thought is confined to the well-trodden paths of logic, unable to wander into the wild, beautiful, and sometimes terrifying forests of the subconscious? The loss of this rich and vibrant inner world would inevitably reshape our art, our science, and our souls. But it would also, in a very practical way, fundamentally alter the architecture of our outer world. How would our homes, our neighborhoods, and our great cities transform to house a population that never, ever rests. What does a bedroom become when it is no longer a sanctuary for sleep? What is the purpose of a space designed for profound vulnerability and unconsciousness in a world where we are never vulnerable or unconscious? In the ever-waking world we are exploring, the very blueprint of our homes, and by extension, our cities, would be fundamentally redrawn. The familiar layout of a house with its public spaces for gathering and its private spaces for rest would become an archaic relic of a bygone era. Bedrooms would not simply be repurposed, their very concept would dissolve. Instead of a large room dominated by a bed, we might find smaller, multifunctional quiet rooms or meditation pods. Spaces designed not for the oblivion of sleep, but for focused, solitary activity, for contemplation, or for a temporary retreat from the ceaseless hum of a fully occupied home. The home itself would transform from a place of evening retreat and nightly shelter into a 24-hour hub of ceaseless activity. The kitchen would see use at all hours. The living spaces would host a continuous rotation of work, learning, and entertainment. The idea of a home settling down for the night would be a forgotten memory. This transformation would ripple outwards, reshaping our neighborhoods and our grand metropolises. The distinct rhythm of a city, the morning rush, the midday peak, the evening commute, and the nighttime quiet would flatten into a constant, steady state of being. Urban planners would no longer design for a single, massive rush hour, but for a population that operates in 3 distinct but equal 8-hour shifts. Public transportation, shops, restaurants, and municipal services would run continuously, at full capacity, around the clock. The very character of our cities would change. The night, once a canvas of glittering lights against a black backdrop, would now be bathed in a constant, soft, full-spectrum glow, an artificial daylight carefully engineered to be both efficient and psychologically soothing. Our windows might become less about letting in the view and more about modulating this ever-present, man-made light. Public spaces like parks, once deserted and sometimes dangerous after dusk, would become vibrant, essential hubs of nighttime life. They would be redesigned with different lighting schemes, zoned for different activities, quiet zones for reading and conversation, active zones for sports and gatherings, all of it humming with life under a sky that is never truly dark. In this relentless pursuit of a city that never sleeps, the psychological and cultural concept of night itself would begin to erode. For all of human history, the night has been a powerful symbol. It has been a time of quiet and introspection, a time of intimacy and secrets, a time of fear and the unknown, a time of dreams and storytelling. Our folklore, our art, our poetry, and our religions are saturated with the potent symbolism of darkness and light, of dusk and dawn. By engineering away the darkness, by filling every moment with light and activity, we would be inadvertently erasing a vast and ancient library of human meaning. We would build a world of breathtaking efficiency, a monument to our own ingenuity and our final victory over the limitations of our biology. But in designing away the shadows and the quiet, in creating a world without sanctuary, without retreat, without the gentle shared ritual of surrendering to the dark, would we also be designing away a fundamental piece of our own soul? Would we create a humanity that is brilliantly productive, yet profoundly impoverished in spirit? This constant, unwavering light, this ceaseless human hum, would not only reshape the contours of our own lives, its glow would spill out beyond the edges of our cities, touching the forests, the oceans, and the skies, and in doing so, it would fundamentally disrupt the delicate, ancient web of life with which we share this lonely planet. What happens to the creatures of the night when the night itself has been vanquished? Listen closely, not with your ears, but with your memory. Can you recall the sound of a perfect summer night? Can you hear the gentle rhythmic chirp of crickets, the deep thrum of a bullfrog, the distant, lonely hoot of an owl, or the soft rustle of a small unseen creature making its way through the undergrowth? This is the nocturne of the natural world, a symphony that has been played every single night for hundreds of millions of years. In our new world, a world perpetually illuminated by the glow of human consciousness, that symphony has been silenced. We stand in a forest at what should be midnight, but the darkness is not complete. It is a hazy, washed-out twilight, the sky above a pale, orange-grey dome of light pollution that has erased all but the very brightest stars. And the forest itself is unnervingly quiet. The vibrant, living sounds of the night are gone, replaced by an eerie, listening stillness. The creatures of the night, their ancient patterns disrupted by our endless day, have either vanished entirely or are struggling to survive in a world that no longer makes sense to them. The rhythm of the entire ecosystem is broken, and we are the ones who broke it. Our incessant light is not a benign presence. For the planet's wildlife, it is a profound and destructive pollutant. The migratory patterns of birds, which have navigated by the stars for millennia, are thrown into chaos, leading them into our ever-lit cities to die from exhaustion and collision. The hunting behaviors of nocturnal predators, like the silent, sharp-eyed owl, are rendered useless in a world without deep shadows to conceal them. The delicate reproductive cycles of amphibians, which often depend on the darkness for their mating rituals, are shattered. And the insects, the small, unsung heroes of our ecosystems, suffer immeasurably. Think of the moth, drawn irresistibly to a flame, an instinct that has now become a fatal flaw. Millions of them, and countless other nocturnal insects, many of them crucial pollinators, are drawn to their deaths around our endless lights. A silent, nightly apocalypse that goes almost entirely unnoticed. The intricate predator-prey dance, a balance refined over eons, would be irrevocably shattered. Prey animals that rely on the cover of darkness for safety and foraging would be exposed and vulnerable, while certain predators might gain a devastating, unsustainable advantage. The entire food web, which depends on the predictable cycle of day and night, would begin to unravel at its seams. And this disruption is not limited to the animal kingdom. Even the quiet, rooted lives of plants are governed by the rhythm of light and dark. The length of the night is a critical signal for many plant species, telling them when it is time to flower, when to bear fruit, or when to enter dormancy for the winter. In a world without a true, unambiguous night, global agriculture would be thrown into disarray, and the natural flora of our forests and fields would struggle to adapt, their most fundamental life cycle cues distorted and confused. In our relentless quest to gain more time for ourselves, we would become the ultimate invasive species, not just occupying a new territory, but fundamentally terraforming the planet's most basic rhythm to suit our own biology. We would be a species that, in its brilliance, has decided to turn on all the lights in the house, forgetting that we share that house with countless other delicate, sensitive, and vital residents. And in our ambition, we would be slowly, methodically, and silently unraveling the beautiful, intricate tapestry of life itself. This profound disconnection from our own planet's natural cycle would eventually force us to look upwards, beyond the hazy, starless sky, to the great, silent cosmic clock whose steady hands we have chosen to so thoroughly ignore. How does this small act of biological defiance, our refusal to sleep, ripple out into the vastness of space and time? Feel, for just a moment, the gentle, almost imperceptible spin of the earth beneath you. It is a motion so constant, so vast, and so smooth that we are almost never aware of it. Yet it is the first and most fundamental rhythm of your entire life. It is the great, silent engine that turns the blue of the sky to the black of night, the force that pulls the sun up from the horizon in the morning and draws it back down in the evening. This steady, 24-hour rotation is the metronome against which the entire symphony of life on this planet has been composed. Let us take a short journey from the ground up into the silent theatre of space. We feel the turning of the day, the slow march of the sun, the gentle pull of the moon on the great oceans, creating the ancient rhythm of the tides. We feel the slow, deliberate tilt of the earth on its axis, giving us the grand, sweeping movements of the seasons. Now, we pull our perspective back, further and further, until we can see our home as it truly is. A beautiful, swirling marble of blue and white, spinning gracefully in the deep, silent darkness. We see its constant, loyal dance with the sun, a celestial partnership that has dictated the terms of life for billions of years. For nearly the entire history of life on Earth, existence has been cleaved into two distinct halves: a period of high energy and abundant light, the day, and a period of low energy and profound darkness, the night. Our need for sleep is not a random biological quirk or a design flaw. It is our biological inheritance, a direct and profound answer to the reality of living on a spinning planet. Sleep evolved, in large part, as the ultimate energy-saving and survival strategy for the dark and dangerous hours. It is a deep, physical resonance with our home planet's most fundamental characteristic. To choose not to sleep is like a single violinist in a grand orchestra deciding to ignore the conductor and play to their own independent rhythm. The violinist might play beautifully, but they are no longer a part of the symphony. Their defiance, their independence, creates a kind of dissonance, a subtle break in the harmony of the whole. Our connection is not just to the sun's light, but to the entire cosmic clockwork of our solar system. The 24-hour cycle is a powerful anchor, a gravitational and energetic reality that our bodies have tuned themselves to over countless generations. Divorcing ourselves from this rhythm is a profound act of disconnection from the physical reality of our environment, and it would inevitably begin to warp our very perception of time itself. Our most basic units for measuring our lives are not arbitrary. A day is one rotation of our planet. A month is, roughly, one cycle of the moon around the Earth. A year is one full journey of the Earth around the sun. Our experience of time is deeply, inextricably linked to these great cosmic movements. What would our sense of time become if we were to sever our connection to its most fundamental physical anchor? Would it become a flat, featureless expanse, losing the beautiful, rhythmic texture that the cycles of day and night provide? Our need for sleep, then, is not a weakness to be overcome. It is a profound and humbling connection to the universe itself. It is a constant, gentle reminder that we are not separate from the cosmos, living on it like visitors. We are a living, breathing, and sleeping part of its magnificent, intricate, and eternal clockwork. To sever this ancient connection is to declare our ultimate independence from the rhythms of nature, to state that our own consciousness is more important than the planetary dance that gave it birth. This act of profound biological defiance raises a much deeper and more unsettling question. If we could successfully re-engineer such a fundamental aspect of our being, if we could silence the whisper of our planet in our own blood, what else could we change? Where would we, or should we, draw the line? Why would evolution, the ultimate and most ruthless efficiency expert, allow us and nearly every other animal to spend a third of our precious lives in a state of profound, vulnerable, and near-total unconsciousness? From a purely survival-based perspective, sleep seems like a catastrophic disadvantage. A sleeping creature is not finding food, it is not reproducing, and it is dangerously unaware of the predators that might be lurking in the shadows. And yet, sleep has persisted, stubbornly, for hundreds of millions of years. This simple and profound question has long fascinated scientists, and the answer takes us on a journey back into the deep, quiet corridors of evolutionary time. Imagine, for a moment, the world of our ancient ancestors, long before the comforting glow of the campfire, let alone the electric light. The day was a time for activity, for hunting, for foraging, for living life out in the open. But the night was a different realm entirely. It was a world of deep, impenetrable blackness. A world where our primary sense, our vision, was rendered almost useless. It was a world where the predators of the night, with their keen senses of hearing and smell, held all the advantages. For a creature like us, to be active at night was to be incredibly inefficient and spectacularly vulnerable. From this stark reality, one of the most compelling theories of sleep was born: the adaptive inactivity theory. This idea proposes that sleep is not an unfortunate necessity, but a brilliant evolutionary strategy. It is a behavior that kept our ancestors still, quiet, and safely hidden during the most dangerous and unproductive hours of the day. It enforced a period of inactivity when the risks of being active simply outweighed the potential rewards. The creature that wasted its energy stumbling around in the dark and making noise for predators to hear was far less likely to survive than the creature that found a safe place to hide and simply shut down until the life-giving sun returned. But it is not just about safety. It is also about energy. For most of our history, calories were a scarce and precious resource, and evolution is a frugal accountant. Every calorie saved was a victory, and sleep is a master of energy conservation. During sleep, your core body temperature drops by a degree or two. Your heart rate slows, your breathing becomes shallower, and your metabolic rate decreases significantly. This all adds up to a substantial saving of energy over the course of the night, energy that could then be used for the demanding tasks of the following day. Sleep, from this perspective, is like a built-in energy-saving mode for the body, a feature designed by the brilliant engineer of natural selection. Perhaps the most powerful evidence for the profound importance of sleep is its near universality. Scientists have studied countless animals, from the humble fruit fly to the great elephant, and nearly every single one exhibits some form of sleep or a sleep-like rest state. Even creatures as primitive as jellyfish, which have no centralized brain, show periods of quiescence from which they are slow to arouse, a state which meets the behavioral definition of sleep. This tells us that sleep is not a recent invention, but an incredibly ancient and deeply conserved biological process. Its roots stretch back at least 500 million years. The fact that evolution has held on to it so tightly across so many diverse species is a powerful testament to its vital importance. Sleep, then, is not lost time. It is time wisely and necessarily invested by evolution over countless eons. It is a core pillar of the survival blueprint that is written into the very fabric of our being. By removing it, we are not just adding 8 hours to our day, we are choosing to ignore the collected wisdom of a billion yesterdays. We are unwinding a spring that has been coiled at the very heart of our biology since the dawn of animal life. And this ancient, vital blueprint is not written in stone, but in the most fundamental language of life itself. To change our need for sleep, we would first have to become masters of our own inner universe, to reach into our cells and rewrite the very code that makes us who we are. What would that delicate, and perhaps dangerous, process even look like? Let us now travel even deeper. Let us zoom past the skin, through the muscle and bone, beyond the great organ systems, until we are floating in the warm, quiet, and intricate inner universe of a single human cell. Even here, in this microscopic, gelatinous world, there is a profound and inescapable rhythm of work and rest, a cycle as ancient and as vital as the turning of the earth itself. Imagine the cell as a bustling, microscopic city, enclosed within a soft, permeable wall. At its center is the nucleus, the city hall, containing the precious library of DNA, the master blueprint for everything. Floating in the cytoplasm are the mitochondria, thousands of tiny, bean-shaped power plants, tirelessly converting fuel into the energy that powers the entire metropolis. The ribosomes are the factories, churning out proteins according to the instructions sent from the nucleus. During our waking hours, this cellular city is running at full capacity. The power plants are burning hot, the factories are working overtime, and the city hall is constantly sending out new orders. There is a continuous, vibrant hum of productive activity. But this activity, this very process of living, creates wear and tear. Tiny molecular machines break down. DNA strands get damaged by rogue oxygen molecules. Waste products accumulate. In a healthy cell, the nighttime, our period of sleep, is when the city's maintenance crews come out. In the quiet of our slumber, a different set of instructions is issued from the nucleus. A remarkable shift occurs in what is known as gene expression. Our DNA contains the code for every tool and component the cell could ever need, but not all genes are turned on or expressed at the same time. Research has shown that our circadian clock, the great conductor, influences the rhythmic expression of up to 15% of all our genes. During sleep, genes related to stress, inflammation, and immediate activity are downregulated or turned off. In their place, a whole suite of genes related to cellular repair, detoxification, and maintenance are switched on. The city's cleanup crews are activated. One of their most critical jobs is DNA repair. Every single day, the DNA, in every one of your cells suffers thousands of instances of damage, simply as a byproduct of normal metabolic processes and exposure to the environment. While some repair happens continuously, much of the most meticulous and critical work is scheduled for the night, during the cellular downtime provided by sleep. Without this dedicated repair window, these tiny errors and mutations could accumulate far more rapidly, like small cracks in a foundation that are never patched. At the same time, the mitochondria, our cellular power plants, get a much-needed chance to recover. After working hard all day, they use the period of reduced energy demand during sleep to repair themselves and to clear out damaged components, a vital process of quality control called mitophagy. In a sleepless world, our cells would never get their collective, molecular sigh of relief. They would be trapped in a state of perpetual high alert, their power plants running continuously without a chance to cool, their factories operating without a maintenance shift, and the precious blueprints in their city halls accumulating uncorrected errors. From the outside, we would feel awake and alert, but from the inside, we would be slowly and steadily crumbling at a molecular level. It would be a new kind of aging, an accelerated decay driven by the relentless, unceasing demands of a consciousness that refuses to rest. We might have conquered the night, but we would have declared a war of attrition against the very cells that build our bodies. And this invisible, internal decay would not remain hidden for long. It would soon begin to show on the largest, most visible organ of our body, the one that interfaces with the world and tells the story of our inner health, our skin. I invite you now to look into a mirror, not a real one, but one in your mind's eye. The face that looks back at you is a story, a living document written over time by laughter and sorrow, by sunlight and worry, and by the gentle, nightly, and invisible repair of sleep. Every night, as you rest, a quiet and miraculous renewal takes place, stitching together the small damages of the day, leaving your skin just a little bit more refreshed, a little bit more resilient for the dawn to come. In the world without sleep, this story of renewal is erased, and a new, much harsher one begins to be written. We would look into the mirror and see the story of our lives accelerating at a startling rate. The subtle elasticity of youth would fade more quickly, replaced by a skin that feels thinner, more fragile. Minor cuts and bruises, which once vanished in days, would linger for weeks, their healing process slow and incomplete. The vibrant, subtle glow of good health would be replaced by a dull, perpetually stressed pallor. We would all wear the same unmistakable mask of exhaustion, a deep, cellular tiredness etched onto our faces, even though we no longer possess the ability to feel tired. This is not mere vanity, it is a direct reflection of a profound disruption in our body's hormonal rhythms. Sleep is the time when our bodies perform their most important hormonal housekeeping, and two of the most important players in this process are human growth hormone, or HGH, and cortisol. Cortisol is famously known as the stress hormone. It is vital for our waking lives, keeping us alert and energized, but it also has a catabolic effect, meaning it breaks things down. During a healthy sleep cycle, cortisol levels drop to their lowest point, giving the body a much-needed break from this state of high alert. In its place, the body ramps up its production of human growth hormone. HGH is the architect of repair. It is the master signal for our bodies to rebuild and restore tissues, including our skin, our muscles, and our bones. One of its most crucial roles is to stimulate the production of collagen, the strong, flexible protein that acts as the primary scaffolding for our skin, giving it its firmness, its structure, and its youthful bounce. In a sleepless world, this elegant hormonal dance would be thrown into chaos. Cortisol levels would remain chronically elevated, keeping our bodies in a constant, low-grade state of stress and breakdown. Meanwhile, the precious, restorative surges of human growth hormone would be suppressed, and with them, the vital production of new collagen. The very framework of our skin would weaken and degrade without being properly rebuilt. To make matters worse, a lack of sleep is strongly linked to a state of increased systemic inflammation. This chronic, low-level inflammation acts like a slow, simmering fire throughout the body, and one of its primary casualties is collagen. The inflammation actively breaks it down. At the same time, our immune system, which is also meticulously recalibrated and strengthened during sleep, would become weaker and less effective, leaving us more susceptible to infections of all kinds. Our faces, then, would become a clear and undeniable testament to the unceasing stress being placed upon our cells. In our world without sleep, we might gain thousands of extra hours of conscious life, but we would see that borrowed time etched onto our bodies with a brutal and unforgiving speed. We would be living longer in hours, but perhaps aging far faster in years. And this relentless, visible march of time, now untempered by any form of rest, would inevitably force us to confront one of the most abstract, powerful, and mysterious forces in our lives: our own perception of its passage. What is a day when it has no definitive beginning or end? What is a week when it is not punctuated by the gentle release of a weekend sleep-in? What is yesterday when it simply flows, without a break, into today, which in turn bleeds seamlessly into tomorrow? In a world without the soft, perceptual walls of sleep, our experience of time itself would begin to warp, to stretch, and to dissolve. The first thing to fade would be the familiar texture of our lives. The rhythm of our existence is marked by the clean break of sleep. It is the full stop at the end of a long and complex sentence, allowing us a moment of pause before we begin the next. It closes the chapter on one day and allows us to start, fresh and new, on the next. This simple, daily act of psychological segmentation is absolutely crucial for how we organize our experiences and perceive the flow of our own stories. Without these nightly partitions, time would become a single, monolithic, and unbroken entity. The distinct markers that we use to navigate our memories would begin to blur into an indistinguishable continuum. The feeling of Tuesday would be no different from the feeling of Friday. Anniversaries and birthdays would lose some of their significance, as they would no longer emerge from the regular, rhythmic pattern of daily life, but would simply be points in a continuous, undifferentiated stream of consciousness. Our own memories would become like a vast, flat tapestry of events, lacking the temporal signposts that give them depth and perspective. We would remember what happened, but the sense of when it happened would become increasingly vague and unreliable. This psychological disorientation would be profound. Our perception of time's passage would likely become deeply paradoxical. On one hand, time might feel as if it were moving incredibly fast, as thousands of undifferentiated hours and days blend together into a single, swift current, carrying us along with no landmarks to gauge our speed. On the other hand, each individual moment might feel agonizingly slow and inescapable. Without the promise of sleep, without the impending release of unconsciousness, there is no escape from the now. We would be trapped in an eternal present, a state of constant, unrelenting awareness. And this endless present would inevitably lead to a profound and unprecedented form of psychological burnout. The initial thrill of the extra hours would, in time, wear off, replaced by a deep and unsettling sense of monotony. Life would begin to feel like a treadmill that has been set to an uncomfortably high speed, with no off switch. The beautiful, life-sustaining rhythm of stress and recovery, of effort and reward, of engagement and release, would be gone, replaced by a flat line of constant engagement. We are not designed to be in a perpetual state of on. The human spirit, much like the human body, thrives on cycles. It needs the quiet valleys as much as it needs the sunlit peaks. In a world without the punctuation of sleep, our lives might feel like one long, breathless, and unending run-on sentence. We would possess more time than any humans in history, but that time might lose its shape, its rhythm, its texture, and ultimately, its meaning. And as this great, undifferentiated river of time washes away the familiar landmarks of our lives, it might begin to erode something even more fundamental. As our perception of the days dissolves, so too might the very foundation of our own identity. Who, after all, are you without the nightly death and gentle rebirth of your own consciousness? Are you the same person you were when you woke up this morning? It is a strange question, but a profound one. There is a distinct feeling that comes with awakening, a slow and gentle reboot of the self. For a few fleeting moments, you might lie in the quiet, reassembling the pieces of who you are. Your name, your memories, your worries, your hopes for the day ahead. It is a quiet, daily miracle of reconstitution, a feeling of a clean slate, a fresh start. Now, imagine a self that is never granted this gift of a fresh start. Imagine a consciousness that is never rebooted, never refreshed. Imagine a continuous, unbroken thread of awareness that accumulates every single bit of the day's friction. Every minor irritation, every fleeting negative thought, every moment of stress, with no mechanism to wash them away. The you that exists at the end of 10,000 continuous hours of consciousness would be a very different entity from the one that is renewed each dawn. This leads us to one of the oldest and most fascinating puzzles in all of philosophy, the paradox of the ship of Theseus. The question is this: if an old ship has every single one of its wooden planks replaced over time, is it still the same ship at the end? Our bodies are much like this ship. Our cells are constantly being replaced. And our minds are even more fluid, our thoughts and beliefs and feelings in a constant state of flux. Sleep, it turns out, is a crucial part of this process of mental renewal and identity curation. When you sleep, as your brain consolidates the important memories and prunes away the trivial neural connections, it is not just acting as a librarian, it is acting as a storyteller. It is actively selecting and strengthening the memories and connections that form the core narrative of who you are. It helps to weave the disparate events of the day into a coherent, ongoing story of the self. In a world of unbroken consciousness, this careful, nightly curation would be lost. Our sense of self might become fragmented, diluted, and unstable. The signal of who we believe we are could be lost in the overwhelming noise of 10,000 hours of continuous, unprocessed experience. We might become like ships that are constantly having new planks added, but never having any of the old, rotten ones removed, becoming bloated, misshapen, and barely able to stay afloat. There is also a deeper, more philosophical truth at play. The state of not being, the quiet void of unconsciousness that we enter every night, is in many ways what gives shape and definition to the state of being. Our vibrant, conscious awareness is made all the more precious and potent by its contrast with its nightly absence. It is the silence between the notes that creates the music. It is the darkness of the night sky that allows the stars to shine. Without that profound, contrasting silence in our own minds, our awareness of being us, of being a distinct, singular self, might become less sharp, more diffuse, like a single, unending musical note that eventually just becomes background noise. Perhaps the self is not a continuous, indestructible stream, but a delicate story we tell ourselves every morning, a story that our brain carefully edits and reassembles from the scattered pages of the day before. In a sleepless world, this story would have no chapters, no paragraphs, and no punctuation. It would be one endless, chaotic, and sprawling narrative. And somewhere in that endless telling, we might tragically and irrevocably lose the plot. This unending story would be written not just by the hands of individuals, but by the grand machinery of society as a whole. How would our economies, built for millennia on the fundamental rhythm of human energy and rest, adapt to a workforce that never, ever tires? Imagine the deep, resonant hum of a great factory that never goes silent. Imagine the soft, pervasive glow of an office building whose lights never, ever darken. Imagine a global marketplace not of stocks and shares, but of human attention and energy that is always open, always active, and always demanding. This is the economic landscape of the world without sleep, a world of hyper-capitalism accelerated to its ultimate and logical conclusion. The very concept of a workday, that familiar 9-to-5 structure that has governed our lives for over a century, would become a quaint and distant memory. Work would no longer be a place you go to, but a state you are in, a fluid and continuous part of your unbroken consciousness. Productivity would no longer be measured in days or weeks, but in uninterrupted cycles of hundreds of hours. The pressure to work, to learn a new skill, to improve, to consume, would become a constant and inescapable force, because the time to do so would now be, for all practical purposes, infinite. There would be no off-peak, no quiet Sunday morning, no sleepy holiday period. The entire global economy would become a single, unified, 24-hour entity, a relentless engine of production and consumption that never needs to cool down. In many ways, this would bring about an era of unprecedented efficiency and growth. Industries like logistics, manufacturing, and data processing would achieve levels of output that we can barely dream of. The seamless, continuous flow of goods and information around the globe would create immense wealth and technological progress. However, this paradise of productivity would have a deeply human cost. The social construct of an 8-hour day was not just about efficiency. It was a hard-won victory for human well-being, an acknowledgement that a life requires a balance of labor, rest, and recreation. By removing the biological necessity for rest, we would also remove the most powerful and fundamental argument for limiting labor. The potential for exploitation in such a world would be immense, as the natural boundary for a day's work would have been completely erased. Furthermore, the human advantage in the workforce has often been our flexibility and endurance. In a world where humans are biologically capable of working without end, the economic appeal of automation would become even more overwhelming. Why employ a human for a continuous task when a machine can do it with more precision and without the messy complications of a conscious mind? This could lead to massive, permanent job displacement across countless sectors. And with a 50% increase in our waking hours, the demand for things to fill that time, entertainment, services, material goods would skyrocket. This would fuel an economy of perpetual, ravenous consumption. Advertising would be everywhere, at every hour, on every conceivable surface, a constant whisper urging us to use our extra time to buy more, experience more, and be more. We would be living inside a perfectly efficient, closed loop of production and consumption, with no escape from the demands of the market. A sleepless world might very well be an economic utopia, a perfect engine of endless growth. But what is the human cost of living in a world where the primary virtue is not wisdom, or kindness, or creativity, but relentless, unending productivity? What becomes of the human soul when it is treated as just another component in a machine that is never, ever allowed to switch off? The very fuel for this great, sleepless engine, the food we eat to power our bodies and minds, would also have to undergo a revolution as profound as our own biology. How, after all, do you feed a world that is always working, and therefore always hungry? Feel the quiet, deep satisfaction of a good meal, the gentle warmth spreading through you, the feeling of your energy reserves being replenished for the hours ahead. It is a simple, primal pleasure. Now, imagine needing to feel that sensation not 3 times a day, but 4, or perhaps even 5. Imagine a hunger that returns with a strange new frequency, a metabolic fire that now demands a constant supply of fuel to power a body, and a mind that are never given a chance to rest. The first and most immediate challenge of our sleepless world would be a global, species-wide hunger crisis. A human being who is awake and active for 24 hours a day would require a significant increase in caloric intake, perhaps as much as a 30 to 50% rise, simply to maintain their body weight and cognitive function. When you multiply that by 8 billion people, you are faced with the staggering challenge of increasing global food production by a measure that would make all previous agricultural revolutions pale in comparison. The strain on our planet's resources, on its land, its fresh water, its very soil, would be unimaginable. Traditional agriculture, with its reliance on the sun and the seasons, would be wholly insufficient to meet this ravenous, unending demand. The pastoral image of a farmer's field, ripening under a summer sun, would become a luxury of the past. Instead, the landscape of our world would be dominated by the strange, glowing architecture of a new kind of harvest. Imagine vast, vertical farms, great windowless towers, stacked stories high in the hearts of our cities, their interiors bathed in the eerie purple and pink glow of precisely calibrated LED lights. Inside, millions of plants would grow in sterile, nutrient-rich mists or flowing water, their growth cycles accelerated, their outputs maximized, their connection to the earth and the sun completely severed. The familiar, earthy smell of soil would be replaced by the sterile, chemical scent of hydroponic solutions. The very concept of seasonal food would vanish entirely, as every fruit and vegetable could be grown, at scale, at any time. We would rely on a new generation of genetically modified crops, designed not for taste or resilience to drought, but for one thing above all, the ability to grow as rapidly and as continuously as possible, mirroring the new rhythm of our own lives. Our own bodies would have to adapt as well. Our metabolism is, by its very nature, cyclical. It is designed for periods of feeding and periods of fasting, a rhythm that is deeply intertwined with our cycle of sleep and wakefulness. In a world of constant activity and more frequent meals, this gentle rhythm would be disrupted. Our bodies would be in a constant state of energy processing, which could have unforeseen and devastating consequences for metabolic diseases like diabetes and obesity, as our ancient biology struggles to cope with the demands of our new, linear existence. We would have solved the problem of limited time only to create an even greater and more intractable problem of limited resources. Our sleepless ambition, our desire for more hours in the day, would begin to consume the planet itself at a terrifyingly accelerated rate. We would become a fire that burns 50% hotter, a species that devours its fuel with a new and ferocious intensity, with no cool and quiet night to temper our consumption. And this relentless cycle of consumption and activity would generate more than just economic growth and agricultural marvels. It would generate waste and noise and heat on a truly planetary scale. What does our world begin to feel like when the planet itself develops a low-grade and ever-present fever? Place your hand, for a moment, on a machine that has been running for a very long time. Feel the warmth radiating from its surface, the subtle, steady vibration of its constant, unceasing effort. It is the signature of energy being transformed, of work being done. Now, imagine that feeling, not on the small scale of a single machine, but on the grand, almost incomprehensible scale of an entire planet. In our world without sleep, humanity has become a colossal, planetary engine that runs continuously, and as a result, the world itself begins to develop a low-grade and ever-present fever. The change would be subtle at first, a collection of barely perceptible shifts. The air in our great cities would feel just a little warmer, a little heavier. The phenomenon we know as the urban heat island effect, where cities are significantly warmer than the surrounding rural areas, would intensify and expand, its borders bleeding outwards until the distinction begins to blur. A constant, low-frequency hum would become the new silence, a baseline of sound generated by the ceaseless motion of traffic, the whir of factories, and the combined energetic output of 8 billion constantly active human beings. The air itself would carry a perpetual, shimmering haze, a mixture of industrial output, dust, and waste heat that softens the edges of the world and scatters the light of the sun. This is not a work of fiction. It is a gentle application of one of the most fundamental and inescapable laws of the universe, the second law of thermodynamics. In its simplest form, this law tells us that no process is 100% efficient. Every time energy is converted from one form to another, whether it is the electricity powering a light bulb, the gasoline powering a car, or the calories powering your own body, some of that energy is inevitably lost as waste heat. A sleepless, 24/7 global civilization would be a colossal engine, constantly converting energy to power its lights, its industries, its transportation, and its very thoughts. And every single second of its operation, it would be pouring a staggering amount of waste heat directly into the fragile envelope of our atmosphere. This relentless output of thermal energy would dramatically compound the effects of climate change. The planet has its own rhythm of heating and cooling. During the day, it absorbs energy from the sun. During the clear, still darkness of the night, it radiates some of that heat back out into the cold vacuum of space. By filling our nights with the heat-trapping gases of industry and the direct thermal output of our ceaseless activity, we would be effectively tucking the planet into a thicker and thicker blanket, reducing its ability to cool itself. The world would not only be warmer, it would also be louder. Noise pollution, a scientifically recognized stressor for both humans and wildlife, would cease to be an intermittent problem of urban life and would become a constant, inescapable, environmental factor across the globe. The quiet refuge of the night would be gone, and with it, the chance for our nervous systems, and the nervous systems of every creature around us, to truly reset. In our heroic effort to conquer the limitations of our own biology, we would have inadvertently placed the entire planetary ecosystem under a relentless, feverish, and multifaceted stress. We would be living inside the very machine that was consuming our home, our own constant activity, the source of the heat, the noise, and the haze. And as we might stand one evening, in what used to be the quiet of the night, looking up at the hazy, orange-tinted, and starless sky of this new world, we might feel a profound and unshakable sense of isolation. It would force us to ask a final, humbling, and perhaps terrifying question. In all this vast, dark, and silent universe, are we the only ones foolish enough to have given up the gift of sleep? Look up, now, into the deep and beautiful mystery of the night sky that we know, a sky filled with countless shimmering points of light. For as long as we have been human, we have stared into that darkness and wondered if we are alone. We build great radio telescopes, sensitive dishes that we turn towards the void, and we listen, with a kind of hopeful patience, for a signal, a sign, a reply. But what if we are listening for the wrong thing entirely? As we listen to the cosmos, we hear the gentle, pervasive hiss of the cosmic microwave background radiation, the ancient echo of the Big Bang. We hear the strange, rhythmic pulse of a distant pulsar, the lighthouse of a long-dead star. We search for the signs of a civilization like our own, the structured signals of a radio broadcast, the industrial markers of a species that has learned to manipulate energy on a grand scale. We are listening for the sounds of a civilization that is busy, productive, and awake. But the universe remains profoundly, deeply, and beautifully quiet. It remains, for the most part, dark. This cosmic silence has given rise to a fascinating and chilling idea known as the Great Filter. The theory suggests that there may be some great, universal barrier, some incredibly difficult step in the evolution of life that prevents civilizations from becoming interstellar and making their presence known. Perhaps that filter is the jump from non-living matter to life, or the leap to complex intelligence. But perhaps the filter lies somewhere in our future. Perhaps the relentless drive for 24/7 productivity, the technological hubris that leads a species to reject its own natural biological cycles, is itself a kind of self-destructive trap, a path that all ambitious but unwise civilizations eventually take. Perhaps we are listening for the wrong kind of intelligence. What if the most advanced and wisest beings in the universe are not the ones who conquer nature, but the ones who achieve a perfect and seamless harmony with it? What if their greatest technological achievements are ones of quietness, of sustainability, of perfect, cyclical efficiency? Perhaps the most advanced beings in the universe spend a great deal of their time in states of rest, of deep contemplation, or in forms of distributed consciousness that we cannot even begin to comprehend, all of it perfectly in sync with the rhythms of their homeworlds. Maybe the true sign of a wise, mature, and sustainable civilization is not a constant, noisy radio beacon, but a planet that gracefully and predictably falls quiet and dark for half of its rotation. A planetary heartbeat of activity and rest. From this cosmic perspective, our sleepless world, which we see as the pinnacle of our achievement, would be a constant, chaotic, and jarring noise in an otherwise quiet and harmonious symphony. Our endless light would be a sign not of advancement, but of a tragic imbalance. Our sleeplessness, our greatest triumph, might be the very thing that marks us as tragically primitive to a silent, watching universe. Perhaps true advancement isn't about doing more, but about finally understanding the profound wisdom of doing less. And this long, strange journey through a world that never rests brings us, finally, full circle. It brings us back from the cold, silent emptiness of space to the warmth and quiet of our own rooms, back to the gentle, familiar pull of our own eyelids. After this grand thought experiment, this exploration of a humanity untethered from its most basic rhythm, what have we truly learned about the beautiful, fragile, and sleepy world that we actually inhabit? Feel, now, the simple, honest weight of your own body, the gentle heaviness of your limbs as you lie here in the quiet dark, Feel the slow, steady rhythm of your own breath, rising and falling like a gentle tide. This sensation, this growing desire to let go, is not a weakness. It is not a flaw to be engineered away. It is a homecoming. After our long and speculative journey to a world of endless, glaring light, we return now to the profound and sacred sanctuary of the night. Let us immerse ourselves, just for a moment, in the beautiful sensory ritual of preparing for sleep. The feeling of a soft pillow conforming to the shape of your head, the comforting weight and warmth of a blanket being drawn up around you, the gradual slowing of your thoughts, from a rushing river down to a meandering stream. It is a process of surrender, a quiet and courageous act of letting go of the day, of releasing your grip on control, and of trusting that the world will continue to turn without your watchful supervision. Compare this deeply human experience, this gentle descent, with the harsh, sterile, and relentlessly efficient world we have just spent so much time imagining. That world had traded this quiet vulnerability for a state of perpetual, guarded alertness. In its quest for more time, it had forgotten the deep and restorative wisdom of surrender. And in this, we find the first great gift of our own reality. Sleep is not merely a biological necessity that we must tolerate. It is a profound and nightly lesson in trust. It is a humble admission that we are not invincible, that we are not machines, and that we have limits. And it is within these very limits, in this cyclical need for recovery, that we find the miracle of renewal. Our shared need for sleep is also one of the great and silent connectors of our species. It is a universal vulnerability that binds every single one of us together. The richest king and the poorest beggar both must close their eyes and surrender to the same mysterious state of unconsciousness. This shared helplessness is a quiet, and often unspoken, source of our deepest empathy. We watch over sleeping children with a fierce and gentle tenderness. We move quietly around the house so as not to disturb a sleeping partner. It is in this state of benign defenselessness that our compassion is so often and so beautifully expressed. We are connected by our need for sleep, not only to each other, but to the vast and beautiful tapestry of life on this planet. The lion in the savannah, the dolphin in the ocean, and the small bird in its nest all share in this ancient, nightly ritual of rest. And this brings us to the final, and perhaps most beautiful, truth. Life is not a straight, unwavering line of progress and productivity. It is a symphony of cycles. There is day, and there is night. There is summer, and there is winter. There is the waxing and waning of the moon. There is a time for activity, and there is a time for rest. Sleep is our daily, personal participation in this fundamental, graceful rhythm of the universe. We have just explored a world that gained a third of a lifetime in raw hours, but in the transaction, it lost its dreams, its emotional balance, its connection to the cycles of nature, and perhaps, in the end, its very soul. Our journey has shown us that what we believe we lose in those quiet, unconscious hours is nothing compared to the immeasurable gifts that we gain. And so, as the world outside our window continues its slow and silent turning, and as the quiet of the night deepens around you, we can finally, gratefully, allow ourselves to drift into that gentle, mysterious, and absolutely essential darkness. The story of the world that never sleeps is now ending. But as it does, another, far more personal and mysterious story is just beginning. It is the story that you will write for yourself tonight, in the strange and beautiful and silent language of dreams. Do not try to force it. Do not try to rush. Simply allow the process to unfold, as it has done on countless nights before. Pay attention, if you like, to the gentle and magical sensations of this transition. Notice the random, disconnected thoughts and images that may float gently through your mind, like colourful leaves drifting down a slow-moving stream. This is the hypnagogic state, a wondrous and creative doorway between the land of wakefulness and the world of sleep. It is a place where logic begins to dissolve, where strange and beautiful new connections are made, a final, fleeting burst of subconscious poetry before the deep quiet descends. You might feel the gentle twitch of a muscle, a small, involuntary letting go. You might feel a pleasant sense of warmth and heaviness spreading through your limbs. and you might feel the slow, delightful sensation of sinking, ever so gently, into the soft, supportive surface beneath you, as the solid, predictable world of the day begins to dissolve at its edges. The sounds of the room around you may begin to fade, merging into a single, gentle, and distant hum. This nightly departure is not an end. It is not lost time. It is a vital and necessary part of a whole and healthy life. It is the fallow period that allows the field of your mind to become fertile once more. It is the quiet drawing back of the bow that allows the arrow of your morning thoughts to fly true and clear. The dawn that awaits you on the other side of this rest will be clearer, the colours will be sharper, and your heart will be calmer, all because you have given yourself this profound and necessary gift. Our long journey together is now complete. The sleepless world remains where it belongs, in the realm of imagination, a distant, cautionary tale that serves only to illuminate the profound and simple beauty of our own reality. The extra hours it promised were a false economy, a fool's bargain. For the true currency of a well-lived life is not measured in minutes stacked one upon the other, but in moments of peace, in flashes of insight, in feelings of deep connection, and in the quiet, steady rhythm of renewal, all things that are nurtured, not in the harsh glare of constant activity, but in the deep, dark, and fertile soil of sleep. Thank you for joining me on this gentle exploration. If you have any thoughts on this journey, or a dream you would like to share, I would be honoured to read it in the comments below. And if you have found some comfort or curiosity here, please consider subscribing for more soothing stories. But for now, all that is left to do is to let go. I wish you a truly peaceful and deeply restorative night's rest. Good night.